welcome to the news on NTA International. I'm Nancy Godi-Angonihu. We're streaming live on Vision TV 247 and on other social media platforms on your screen. And now, I'm Nancy Godi-Angonihu, and the sign language personality is Taiwo Ozoma. First, the headlines. President Tinubu meets King Charles III as world leaders converge on Dubai for COP28. Former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger dies at 100. 10th National Assembly Joint Committee on Electoral Reform convenes town hall meeting to review legal framework. We begin with environment reports. Conference of Parties COP28 opens in Dubai with calls for accelerated action and higher ambition against the escalating climate crisis. Charles Alpha reports that the conference takes place in what is already known to be the hottest year ever recorded in human history, and as the impacts of the climate crisis wreak unprecedented havoc on human life and livelihoods around the world.
30th November to 12th December 2023 will be a major decisive moment for world leaders to act on climate commitments and prevent the worst impact of climate change on the planet, as the United Nations Climate Change Conference COP28 opens with a resounding call to accelerate collective climate action in Dubai. This year's COP marks the conclusion of the global stocktake, the first assessment of global progress in implementing the 2015 Paris Agreement. The world's latest UN report says the world is not on track to limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century, but does recognize that countries are developing plans for a net zero future and the shift to clean energy is gathering speed. But it makes clear that the transition is nowhere near fast enough yet to limit warming. This global stocktake will be a catalyst for greater ambition in meeting the Paris Agreement's goals as nations prepare to submit revised national climate action plans by 2025. It lays out actions on how to accelerate emissions cuts, strengthen resilience to climate impacts, and provide the support and finance needed for the transformation. And as leaders leave Dubai after the opening summit today, their message to their negotiators would be clear: do not come home without a deal that will make a real difference. Nigeria is among the 160 countries participating at this global event and will be hoping it will find answers to some of its own questions regarding its energy transition plan, mitigation and adaptation efforts. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
Meanwhile, African delegates demand climate finance and fossil fuels for just transition at COP28. At the official opening ceremony of COP28, COP President Dr. Sultan Ahmed Al-Jaber made the case for trust, purpose, partnership, and pragmatism as components essential for a successful COP28. He encouraged delegates to make a way for and ensure the inclusion of the role of fossil fuel in a just transition, adding that delegates must be flexible, find a common ground, and never lose sight of the North Star, which is 1.5 degrees Celsius, as they go into negotiations. Climate finance, he notes, is not available, accessible, or affordable, promising that the COP presidency will unlock climate finance to ensure that the global south does not have to choose between development and climate action. Dr. Sultan insists that loss and damage must be delivered, while adaptation and mitigation must be at the heart of all actions, encouraging countries to bridge the finance gap, put nature, lives and livelihood at the core of national plans. Reacting to the opening address of the COP28 president, some delegates from the African continent say they expect negotiators to support the efforts of developing countries that require resources from investments in oil and gas, including Nigeria, which plans to use gas as a transition energy to fund its climate change programs.
is saying is we should consider fossil fuel as a transition fuel, which is the position of Nigeria as well. Nigeria has an abundance of natural gas reserves, over 200 trillion cubic feet, and for us, it's a welcome initiative that we consider gas as a transition fuel while considering the phase down of the fossil fuel, because the natural gas can serve as our fossil energy in this case, and we know the power of energy. It drives opportunities, it drives economic development, which Nigeria desperately wants at the moment.
The question of accountability is normal and should be taken as a tool that we must develop and have in this process. If we do not have accountability from the both sides, we are not moving forward. So it is a question on which we have to discuss so that we could find normal solution, a way forward.
Beyond promises, the delegates anticipate real and concrete actions in fulfilling climate finance pledges already made, especially that of the $100 million annually from the developed north to the developing south in pushing for climate finance.
Is a source of hope. The Congo Basin is one of the largest sinks in the world, but the communities that are living there are in desperate situation. Therefore, if we want the forests to be maintained, then we need to find alternative livelihoods for those people. If we talk about biodiversity, where would you find the big fives roaming around in the world? It is in Africa.
Generally speaking, from an African perspective or an African reality, I'm not really sure that leaders will be able to use climate finance as it must be, because we know they have even failed to use other finances for other projects. Even for this one of climate change, I'm afraid that it will be the same. But maybe because the effects of climate change is somehow so visible, maybe they will just try to be fair and they use it for what is supposed to be used for.
Yes, the delegates expect African leaders to be prudent and accountable in the use of funds against the tradition of mismanagement of resources that has bedeviled the region for a long time. And King Charles of the United Kingdom is among the world leaders attending the United Nations COP28 Climate Summit in the United Arab Emirates. The King is to meet with world leaders at the COP28 Environment Conference. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu is among the first leaders who had a discussion with the King on energy and the Israel-Hamas crisis. President Tinubu left Nigeria for the conference on Wednesday and plans to remind developed countries of their public pledge to provide $100 billion annually for support to localized initiatives to address climate change-related challenges during COP28. The Nigerian delegation to the summit are expected to actively explore new and deeper bilateral partnerships to implement Nigeria's energy transition, Article 6 projects, internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, ITMOS, technology transfer, capacity building, and methane mitigation. Away from COP28, the news of the death of the Nobel Peace-winning academic and foremost American diplomat Henry Kissinger has evoked reactions from around the world. The inexplicable realist, who died at the age of 100, fled Nazi Germany for the United States as a child, became U.S. Secretary of State and a political celebrity. Francis Udojo has more on this leader.
I have to be clear about the forces which are at work in the Middle East.
Henry Kissinger's work on the diplomatic opening of China to the U.S. and landmark U.S.-Soviet arms deals earned him respect. However, his role in the Vietnam War, his polarizing policies in the United States bombing of Cambodia from 1969, and his support for anti-communist dictatorships, particularly in Latin America, made him a divisive figure. Some world leaders have paid tribute to one who has shaped current world history and diplomacy. Chinese ambassador to the United States, Xi Feng, he expressed deep shock and was saddened to learn of Dr. Kissinger's passing, describing it as a tremendous loss for their countries and the world. European Council President Charles Michel says he had the privilege of meeting Henry several times, describing him as a kind human and a brilliant mind who, over 100 years, shaped the destinies of some of the most important events of the century. French President Emmanuel Macron said Henry Kissinger was a giant of history. His century of ideas and diplomacy had a lasting influence on his time and the world. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, on his part, hailed Kissinger for his commitment to the transatlantic friendship, saying he always remained close to his German homeland. Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed his condolences over the death of Kissinger and in a telegram to Kissinger's widow, Nancy, that he was a wise and far-sighted statesman. United Kingdom Foreign Secretary David Cameron said he was saddened to hear of Kissinger's death, describing him as a great statesman and deeply respected diplomat who will be greatly missed on the world stage. Former U.S. President George Bush says America has lost one of the most dependable and distinctive voices on foreign affairs with the passing of Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger worked in the administrations of 2 presidents, counseled many others, and was still active, meeting world leaders even at 100. Francis Udojo, NT News.
Reporters protest in Acapulco after 4 journalists were shot and wounded in southern Mexico. This is the latest in a series of attacks that make the country one of the most dangerous for reporters. One of the demonstrators says the situation is serious and worrisome because it does not just violate the Constitution, but it also creates an atmosphere of fear for journalists. Mexico president said 2 of 4 news photographers who were shot Tuesday are in serious condition, as prosecutors confirmed that a 5th journalist was shot and wounded the same day. The 4 photojournalists were shot near a military barracks in the southern Guerrero states after they returned from a crime scene. They had been covering one of the many homicides that occur on a near daily basis in the city of Chipinango. President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador said, and I quote, "We must regret this," unquote, referring to the shooting, but did not offer any information on a possible motive for the attack. Now, Senegal's naval officers say they have seized more than 3 tons of cocaine from a ship off the coast of Dakar. The authorities say 10 crew were on board. Among them, 1 is a Senegalese. They did not provide further crew details nor indicate the value of the cargo, but condemned and confirmed the boat was seized on international waters. The vessel was escorted to a naval base in Dakar for identification and logging of the seized products. The UN body says between 2019 and 2022, at least 57 tons of cocaine were seized in West Africa or en route to the region, primarily in Cape Verde, Senegal, and Benin. Senegal's Navy also in January seized more than 800 kilos of cocaine from a ship off the coast of Dakar. Senegalese customs had furthermore announced in October 2022 the seizure of 300 kilos of cocaine, worth nearly 37 million euros, and a refrigerated truck coming from neighboring Mali. This is the news on NTA International. We take a break. Nigeria is 90% on course towards meeting the United Nations target of ending AIDS by 2030. Minister of State for Health, Tunde Alausa, who said this, stressed the need to involve communities at the center of interventions. Basi Taitman reports.
It's all about the communities. We are pushing for the last mile to end AIDS in Nigeria, and communities are very important. Without communities, we cannot end AIDS.
Let community lead is a Nigerian theme for this year's celebration.
Their leadership and advocacy ensure responses remains relevant and grounded, keeping people at the center and leaving no one behind.
Let us remember that it's communities who were there in the beginning. We all represent a community, and it's communities that are going to lead well into the future and sustain the gains that we've collectively achieved together.
Nigeria is said to be on the right track in HIV intervention. The speaker stressed the need for government at all levels to own and sustain funding for HIV to avoid overdependence on foreign aid.
Now we also have issues around improvement in the reduction in the AIDS deaths. It has dropped significantly from over 80,000 many years back to around 30,000 now annually. Also, the new infections has dropped significantly from 111,000 that it used to be in 2015 to close to about 30,000 what it is now. So Nigeria is making significant progress.
It is instructive to note that emphasis and spotlight is now on leaders at every level to engage our communities in ensuring that we end AIDS by 2030.
Experts advocate for testing as early detection. They noted can save lives. Basi Taikbam, NTA News.
As the Nigerian Senate commences debate on the general principles of the proposed 2024 appropriation bill, lawmakers express optimism that the assumptions and parameters would effectively address pressing socio-economic needs in the country. Exigencies. He said some of the decisions of government to achieve improvement across sectors include strengthening of framework for public-private partnership and concessions, as well as leveraging opportunities in green finance.
One with the platform and capacity to pay the debt itself and catapult one into a brighter future. And two, the second option, which is more dangerous, is to shrink the economy and risk political suicide and economic turbulence by sacking workers, obliterating opportunities, cutting social service, and starving our communities to death and oblivion.
Other lawmakers emphasized on equitable and fair distribution of resources and particular attention to implementation for all-round prosperity. The exigency to address some ambiguities, complexities and inadequacies in the nation's electoral process prompted the convening of a town hall meeting of the Joint Committee of the 10th National Assembly with stakeholders, especially citizens, to review legal framework of the process. National Assembly correspondent Joshua Gunjide has details.
The maiden edition of the town hall meeting by the 10th Assembly's Joint Committee on Electoral Reforms centers on creating a platform for a national conversation on the reforms required for improvement of Nigeria's electoral process, engaging citizens to highlight priorities for electoral reforms in both chambers of legislation. The Joint Committee admitted that the electoral umpire INEC must be unbundled, just as it is of profound importance to review mode of appointing INEC chairman and commissioners.
We are already in the process of putting together a technical working committee that will put all outcomes of our engagements and make recommendations to the Joint Committee. Permit me to appreciate participants who have already sent in hundreds of recommendations by mail in the last 2 weeks. Your suggestions are already being collated by our secretariat. It will interest you that every submission named this gathering will be carefully considered and processed, which will form part of our data in the process of amending the Electoral Act.
I want us to take full advantage of this opportunity facilitated by Young Africa to kickstart a process that will lead to the emergence of an Electoral Act that will satisfy the yearnings of the majority of Nigerians.
Stakeholders enlightened the public on priorities such as removing the ambiguity in the electoral law to make electronic transmission of results mandatory, among other reforms.
We have made very good inroads in the past, particularly in the last elections, it was a very free, fair and credible electoral process. With the introduction of beavers, most of us in the National Assembly today would not have been here. So we must appreciate our electoral umpires for the roles they have played in the past, and then look up to a better future.
Other proposals include prescription of cross-capital for legislators and elected executives, as well as extending local standing to tax-paying citizens to file cases against candidates for filing false information to INEC in party nomination documents. From the National Assembly, Joshua Ogujide, NTA News.
The questions of whether liberal or Western democracy has delivered on its objectives for Africa, or if it requires modification to suit cultural peculiarities of the African people, were what scholars attempted to find answers to. Kelvin Ogunoye reports this convergence of scholars in Abuja was at the third public lecture series of the African School of Diplomacy and International Relations.
Independence saw initial progress at democracy in Africa, which is threatened by the resurgence of military coup in many countries, with as much as 5 since 2021. The impact of these on nation building is enormous. Recent scholars in the continent are heightening the conversation of possible modification patterns of liberal democracy, with a touch of cultural identity and leadership practices in Africa that will take into consideration issues of ethnicity, religion, and historical tenets that will enable African countries accelerate nation building, where they will be relevant in the political economy of the global race.
Purposeful leadership, strong economy, strong institutions. Can we get there? This is our position, that we must strengthen our institutions.
It's a conscious decision made in response to the prevailing political and economic deficit in Africa. Despite the remarkable stride made in the nation-building efforts across the continent, it remains an unfinished business.
With the school advancing its programs to raise new crop of diplomats to play significant roles on the global stage, some eminent Nigerians, including Her Regal Majesty Olori Temitope Ogunwosi, wife of the Ooni of Ife, were conferred with honorary doctorate degrees of the school in collaboration with Queen's University, Belfast, United Kingdom.
Advocacy comes in. We'll continue to advocate for a good Nigeria, a good economy. So we will not stop. It's a collective thing. One will chase 1,000, 10,000. So we need to come together. It's a drive for us to be better, to do more.
Over 20 new individuals were also inducted as associate and graduate members of the African School of Diplomacy and International Relations at the event. In Abuja, Kelvin Ogunoye, NTA News.
New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, is seeking global attention to what it calls a worrisome situation over the Kano State governorship election tussle, which is now before the Supreme Court. National Working Committee of the party was at the Secretariat of the African ECOWAS Commission, European Union and the U.S. Embassy, calling for proper monitoring of the judicial process over Kano governorship election. The party leadership is insisting that the discrepancies in the judgment of the appeal is not a mere error, raising concerns that there are deliberate attempts to rob the party and the Kano State governor of victory.
The rule of law, to allow the judiciary to do its work. All we are asking for, all the people of Kano are asking for, is justice. No favors, nothing, just justice. We believe that if the rule of law is followed, Abba Kabir Yusuf will be retained as governor of Kano State.
Of the various organizations promised to take their message to the appropriate authority.
But really important when we engage on peaceful matters.
Labour Party has raised concerns that the Independent National Electoral Commission is frustrating its efforts at filing petition before the Imo State Governorship Election Tribunal. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, governorship candidate of the party, Senator Athan Achono, said despite an order of the tribunal mandating INEC to allow the party access to materials for the election, the commission is denying them the opportunity. He is worried that their petition may suffer a huge blow if they cannot access the materials, especially the beavers, where the information needed for the petition are stored.
Doesn't call them to order by today or by the end of today,
so that the correct thing should be done tomorrow. Well, we'll just give up and allow the judiciary to do whatever it is that they do. I still believe in this country, no matter what anybody says. Yes, I have come across a lot of men of integrity in this country, very few of them, but something must give.
The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, says it has put all machineries in motion to have the best of Savicom units to attend to Nigerians. Director General of the agency, Mustafa Habib Ahmed, stated this while declaring open and sensitization training for the agency's Savicom units. Ilyasu Yakubu reports.
Since the 19th of September, when the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, unveiled the Savicom Service Charter for efficient service delivery, the Director General of the agency promised to ensure all necessary support is provided for the unit for outstanding performance. This sensitization training, the DG NEMA said, is one of such trainings that the Savicom unit will be enjoying to build its capacity. He advised participants to take every bit of the training with seriousness so that the aim of having a world-class Savicom charter will be achieved in NEMA.
The NEMA Savicom Service Charter is a document that defines the parameters of the service delivery we strive to achieve as an organization. It embodies our commitment to providing efficient and effective emergency management service to all those who rely on us in times of need.
NEMA, as an agency responsible for managing emergency and disaster in Nigeria, plays a critical role in safeguarding the lives and well-being of the citizens. In Abuja, Ilyasu Yakubu, NTA News.
Friday's weather prospect is next. That's the end of the news. On behalf of Taiwo Ozama, who's been on sign language, I'm Nancy Godiangani, who thanking you for watching.